Iniciaremos agora o painel 3, Estudo Nacional Americano de Capacidade Financeira. E já compondo a mesa temos a moderadora, a senhora Lori Schock, que é diretora do Office of Investor Education and Advocacy da CVM americana, SEC. E também compondo a mesa a doutora Annamaria Lusardi, PhD, Diretora Acadêmica do Centro de Excelência Global em Letramento Financeiro, GFLEC, da George Washington University. E também a senhora Gary Walsh, vice-presidente sênior da FINRA e presidente da FINRA Foundation. Passamos a palavra, então, à moderadora, senhora Lori Schock.
You know, it's my pleasure to moderate this panel. I was here 7 years ago, and it was the first launch of the National Financial Capability Survey from the United States. So 7 years later, it's a third iteration, and I am pleased to have my colleagues, Dr. Annamaria Lusardi, as well as Jerry Walsh. And Anna, start us off, would you please? Let's see where we've gone in 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be back in Rio. And I have to say, it has been a privilege to work with FINRA Investor Education Foundation on this important survey. I'm very, very happy to talk today about financial capability. But this has also been a joint project with all of the regulators. In designing the survey, FINRA has been very open, not just to researchers, but we have worked together with the team of Lori from the Security and Exchange Commission, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Department of the Treasury, because financial capability survey, and this survey has also been part of the National Strategy for Financial Literacy. And as you'll see and hear today, Jerry, not just now, but also later in the day, the FINRA Investor Foundation is really thinking very big about an important topic, and they have really been very truly innovators on this topic. It is also a privilege to be here and really see the work that CVM has been doing on this topic. If you have been here like me this week, you really can see that we can title this week of conference Thinking Forward. And I want to congratulate the work of Leonardo and Vasco and the team at CVM for their anniversary. I guess because they are young, only 40 years old, then you can be very innovative. And of course, they are as old as Vasco, so happy birthday again. At GFLEC, we are very passionate about collecting data because, like many others I've heard this morning, policy needs to be evidence-based. Otherwise, we are shooting in the dark. And the FINRA foundations and the work they've been doing on the National Financial Capability Study is one of the 3 projects that we are involved with at GFLEC with regard to collecting data. 2 other important ones are the OECD PISA data, and I hope you have heard the news this week. On Tuesday, the 2015 second wave, actually not second wave, many waves of PISA data have been released, but the financial literacy data will be released on May 24, 2017 in Paris, so please save the date. The second project that we have been involved with is the Global Financial Literacy Survey. This is truly a survey that covers more than 140 countries. I mentioned the data last year here in Rio, and we are working for the second survey. So if you are interested in that, please see me. It's great to talk about financial capability because that's a very important topic today and around the world, and we have certainly seen that people are very sensitive about how they are doing in their own personal finances. I'm going to cover this topic by trying to answer the questions, but so many years after the financial crisis, how are families doing financially? Are Americans financially prepared? What is their capability? We can answer these questions because, as Lori has said, we now have 3 waves of data. So we can go back to 2009 and follow financial capability over this long time horizon. And financial capability is almost taking the pulse of the economy, but from the looks and from the eyes of the consumers. So we are not looking only at the aggregate statistics, but we are looking at how the personal finances of individuals are and how they are faring when we look at what they do with their money. The scheme of my presentation will be about some of the summary of what indicators of financial capabilities are. I'm also going to try to explain why there is a role for research, or what has been our role as researcher in contributing to the financial capability assessment. And then I'm also going to try to show you that not just we collect data, but then we can apply that learning, for example, to do better financial wellness program and to improve financial capability. So let me start by actually telling you that the National Financial Capability is in its third wave. It's an online survey of more than 25,000 respondents. In 2015, we have 27,000 respondents. And I've brought with me the data in this very nice way in which FINRA has actually now put the data available. If you are very keen on data or a data nerd like we do, I'm very happy to give you some of the information. In fact, this little card actually contains the 3 waves and the 3 reports. The survey really offers some unique information not available in any other national surveys in the US. And it provides, I would say, an encompassing view of household finances. And the really nice things that we have been able to do, again, via the help and capacity of FINRA Investor Education Foundation, is for each wave to add new questions so we can address some really urgent topic. And today I'm going to tell you some of the new questions as well we have added to that survey. So how do you measure financial capability? As you know, we have used the framework used in many other countries, and capability is basically composed of 4 components. I'm going to list them here so you can see them, but this also allows me to say when we talk of financial capability, we can't just look at one behavior. It's really a set of behaviors, and it covers and spans from the short-term money management to the long-term money management to managing financial product to having the knowledge and information to do so. I can tell you that we have precisely 100 questions to measure financial capability in the survey. So clearly, if you're going to measure financial capability, you don't have that much information. But what I'm going to show you is that actually we can focus on one indicator for each of these components, and we can have an actually good, even though crude, indicator of financial capability. So I'm going to show you that even with a handful of questions, now we are able to measure financial capability, and we are also able to maybe look at programs that can improve the financial capability just by focusing on some proxy of that behaviors that characterize financial capability. So let me actually start with the first one. In order to look at what people do with their short-term financial management, their, in a sense, day-to-day money management, we have added a question which is considered or classified as financial fragility. And I'm going to show you how the question is worded. The question asks, how confident are people to come up with $2,000 in 30 days? And I'm going to, I have highlighted in there the 3 important concepts in this question. This is actually a very encompassing and rich question because it measures not just the capacity to come up, but the confidence in coming up or facing a mid-size shock, hence the $2,000 value, if the car breaks down, if a child needs braces, and the capacity to come up not just today, not just right away, but in 30 days. And the way in which we have also asked the questions, we have different kind of measure of that confidence, and I'm actually going to just pick two of the answer, and if you are not able for sure to come up, or you think you don't have the confidence of coming up with $2,000, these people are going to be considered financially fragile. This question actually is really able to characterize how the US economy has been doing over time. And as you can see, from 2009 to 2015, we certainly, as the economy is improving, so are the personal finances of families. In 2009, 1 in 2 Americans could not come up with $2,000 in 30 days. This is what financial crisis means, and this is what, like the suffering that can impose on families. In 2015, 1/3 of the population could not come up with $2,000 in 30 days, so the economy is doing much better. But, and this is an important other message I want to convey, we need to go beyond the averages, because there are specific groups which display, of course, different behavior. And this is something that regulators need to consider. So, for example, if you look at the millennials, here we have defined them as age 23 to 35, they are a lot more financially fragile. A group which is also much more financially fragile are women. Women are disproportionately less confident of coming up with $2,000 in 30 days than men. Let me turn now to the second component. Let's move from the short run to the longer term. When we look at planning ahead, I'm actually going to use a variable that somebody mentioned this morning already, which is actually really able to capture whether people have some tendency to actually think about the future and act upon the future. And this is concerning with retirement planning. The question we have asked is actually a question which has been added to many surveys around the world, and basically try to see whether people have done at least some attempt to calculate or to come up with how much they need to save for retirement. It's a very simple question, but its simplicity is deceiving, because this question is extremely predictive of something we care a lot about, which is retirement savings. And retirement planning is one of the biggest predictor of retirement savings. In fact, the people who plan have 3 times the amount of wealth of people who do not plan. And it's not because the planners are already different. Yes, they are. But even if you take 2 people with higher income, higher education, and all the characteristics conducive to retirement saving, if they plan more, actually they are going to have higher wealth at retirement. Let me turn, interestingly, again, this planning is very interesting that it hasn't really changed over time. And what we see is that this resistance actually to the retirement planning itself, actually a few people, in fact, half of the population in the US do any planning, even though most of the pension plans now are defined contributions. When you look also at the differences of retirement planning, it's not that it's just the young who do not plan. Even if you look at people 10 to 15 years away from retirement, they are also not planning. And another group which is not planning is women. Even though they live longer, they are much less likely to plan for retirement. Let me turn again now to the third component. And this time, I'm not going to look at the asset side of the balance sheet, but at the liability side of the balance sheet. And the fact is that is a much more prevalent component in the balance sheet of American families. In other words, one asset or one part of the balance sheet, not asset, but one component of a balance sheet we see in every family's personal finances is debt. And that's why we need to consider debt. And the third questions that I'm going to actually tell you about is let's try to measure what's the behavior toward debt. And we have summarized this in another simple question that asks how much people they think they have too much debt. And we have an index that goes from 1 to 7. So actually we can characterize as people as thinking that they have too much debt with this very simple indicator. What you see here is pretty striking because debt and being over-indebted is actually stable over the life cycle. Even when people should accumulate wealth, even when they get close to retirement, they still feel they have carried a lot of debt. Okay? But if you think of the question, over-indebtedness, it seems to indicate that the decision wasn't really correct. Actually, what we have done in the 2015 National Financial Capability, we have looked at one component of debt which is becoming very important in the US economy, which is student loan. At $1.3 trillion, student loan is the second largest consumer debt in America after mortgages. But student loans are not just present among the young. They are actually present even among the adult population because you can take up student loan to continue your education and also to pay for your children or grandchildren's student loan. This is actually very important. And when we ask the millennials if they could do this question again, would they make the same decision? A staggering 57% of young people said, I would actually make a different decision. And I think it's an indication that when we look at behavior toward debt, that's perhaps one of the behavior where we can really find ways to make improvement, to make changes, and certainly among the young, that's very important. Because this was so prevalent and the results were so striking, just a few weeks ago, we have issued a policy brief just on student loan, joined with FINRA Investor Education Foundation. I'm happy to give you more copies. And they really speak of the severity of this problem. Young people start their economic life in debt, and they feel they have already taken up too much debt. The fourth component, as I've mentioned, is financial literacy. This is the topic I love to tell you about. Financial literacy is measured with several questions. But actually, I can tell you that 3 questions are indeed very predictive of financial knowledge. Not only, but these 3 questions alone that measure simple capacity to do a calculation in the context of interest rate, inflation, or risk diversification are actually able not only to characterize whether people have the ABC of finance, but they are also linked to all of the behavior we have seen before. For example, over-indebtedness, financial fragility, planning for retirement. So the people who have that knowledge are better able to actually be financially capable, as we expect. These questions have been actually tested in as many as 15 countries. In the report, we report the exact wording, so I'm not actually going to report it to you, but actually I want to tell you and show you this particular graph that shows how financial knowledge evolves over age. If we think that this is actually the age profile and it doesn't characterize generation, but if we think that this is how we are going to learn financial literacy as we grow older, look, people up to the age 40, only less than 30% are financially literate. But by age 40, we have made most of our most important financial decisions, from buying a house to buying a car to invest in education. And we do this with the most basic financial knowledge. To me, this profile is one of the reasons why we need to step up the effort for financial literacy. Otherwise, we have a generation and we have young people who will, find themselves in troubles later on. I also want to indicate that those young people who carry $1.3 trillion of student loan, only a little more than 10% are financially literate. And you should be scary of these statistics. So we have talked about financial capability, and the reason why we can do so is because we can measure financial capability in actually just a list of few questions. Not only we can measure capability with just a handful of questions, but now we can also use this information to actually improve the financial capability. And one way to do so is indeed to refer back to the question we have seen and actually have programs that actually do increase the capability, which is an encompassing measure. We can't just look at one behavior, but we need to actually increase and do better in several areas. So, we need people to be financially secure in the short run, so people need to have precautionary saving, but they also need to be financially secure in the long run, so we can promote, for example, tax advantage asset and employer matches. This is very much related to the experience of the US, of course, where there are a lot of these defined contribution pension. We also don't really need to look at debt and debt management. That is actually one component where people really have difficulties and where the financial capability is smaller, and also we need to improve financial literacy as well. A simple analogy of financial capability that I can think of is actually health. So in the same way in which we want to be financially, in which we want to be fit, and we do a checkup every year, so we can do a financial checkup every year, so we can improve our financial fitness, and in particular, we can do prevention, which is much less expensive than actually fixing the problem when it does happen. What we have done in our work, we have used, for example, all of the information that we have gotten from the research to design program to improve financial capability. I know I've already presented this project, but this is actually one example of how you can take the research and the evidence from the National Financial Capability and design program. The financial capability certainly speaks of the need to help millennials make good financial decisions, and we have done so literally taking all of the suggestions that the National Financial Capability has been giving us. And we have actually done a lot more, and in fact, all of the work we have done using financial capability to improve financial wellness is now present, and we have built a website that really describes how the data can actually be used to improve and do program to improve financial capability. Let me conclude by saying several years after the financial crisis, the finances of many families are not still recovered. So there is a need to step up the effort to improve financial wellness, to improve financial capability. And I have to say many programs, including the one I've heard this week, have been proven effective. So, we can learn a lot by sharing all of this information in this week here. And I want to conclude actually connecting back to some of the things I've mentioned earlier, which is it's very important that we not only focus on financial capability in the population, but we understand that people are different and we target specific groups, in particular the most vulnerable ones. And there is a message that comes up both from the financial capability, but also from the other two surveys that we have done, the OECD PISA data and the Global Financial Literacy Survey. Two groups which have a lot of potential are the millennials and women. Let's not forget, in case of the millennials, that the young are our future. Let's not also forget that when we look at women, if you improve their financial capability, not only you improve the financial capability of women, but of the people around them. So women have a multiplier effect. These two groups are what we are focused on at the GFLEC, because we believe that if you help the young and the women, you are going to change the world. Thank you.